this video, we will make use of the more complex macro case. But first, I want to clean up our previously made workflow a bit. First, we will make some changes to our filter. For the moment, we have two different filters for JPEGs and TIFF files. Let's use the same for both file types. In the file filter, I'll add one more condition so the filter now handles both JPEGs and TIFF files. I also turn off that all restrictions must match because now I want either JPEG or TIFF files to pass the filter. I also changed the name to image files. Then I delete the unnecessary connectors. And the second file filter. I finally connect the file filter's output for files that does not pass the filter to the delete action. Then we have two backup actions. We don't need two. Instead, we could manage with just one. And finally, we have two different actions for output. One for JPEG and one for TIFF files. We could actually use the same and then use the case macro to route the file to the corresponding routing folder. So let's take a look at the case macro. The case macro is very useful and versatile. Easy explained, case is used as if this, then that, or else. So if a condition is met, do this, otherwise that. As you already know by now, a complex macro requires a left bracket and a right bracket. To write complex macros, I have found it easier to write the macros bit by bit outside the macro field itself. Maybe just use the simple text editor, especially when working with large macros containing a lot of macros in macros. I tend to start the case macro with writing condition, comma, true, comma, false. I will later replace the actual text condition, true, false with proper values. So let's think about what we want this case to do. I want to check if the file extension is JPEG or TIFF. If so, I want the JPEG file to be saved in the JPEG folder, and the same thing goes for the TIFF file in a corresponding folder. So I start with the condition. I want to check the file extension, and guess what? There is a macro for file and file extension. F for file and E for extension. The E macro also includes the period before the extension itself. So now I know that I should compare E with the file in the scope. The condition is then written like %E % equal dot JPEG. There are always two equal signs when we want to compare if something is equal. Refer to the online manual for more options and information. So if the file was called image.jpg, then the condition would be met. That means true in our case macro. If not, then it means false. So what would we like to happen when it's true? We want the file to be saved in a folder called JPEG, otherwise a folder called TIFF. So now I have all the components to replace the starting text I used in the case macro. Remember, the commas in the macro is very important. Those are what separates the parameters from each other. So the last thing we need to do is to copy our case macro and paste it as the routing folder in Corbit. And of course, test the workflow out. It worked as expected. A JPEG folder was created and a TIFF folder was created. Let's try it out.